Hi, my name is Francois Nodia and I am a super teacher. This week has been a crazy week for Afrikaans schools and one in particular. If you don't know anything about the Overvaal incident, you are probably living under a rock or you're not living in South Africa. But that's okay. This week I've decided to tackle this issue, but I don't want to talk about the actual incident that occurred at Overvaal because I do think there's a bunch of other media outlets that have covered the actual news. But I thought we should have a discussion about some of the talking points that came out of this incident. And the big question I'm asking myself is this the end of Afrikaans medium schools in South Africa? So in this episode, I'm going to share my thoughts on this idea that Afrikaans schools perpetuate racism. But more importantly, I'm going to share my thoughts on what I think the bigger issue is that very few people are talking about. I'll also be heading on over to Twitter to see what was said on the hashtag Overvaal matter. But before we jump into this episode, be sure to answer the question of the week in the comment section down below. Do you think this is the end of the road for Afrikaans schools? Be sure to also add an explanation of your answer. But before we continue, make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel and that you also hit that little bell that serves as a notification for whenever we upload videos on this channel. With all that being said, let's educate. It all started towards the end of 2017 when the Gauteng Department of Education ordered Hoërskool Overvaal to accept 55 English-speaking learners into the Afrikaans medium school. The school then challenged this order in the High Court. Early in January 2018, the court ordered that the school did not have to accept these 55 English-speaking learners. The MEC of Gauteng Education, Mr. Panyaza Lesufi, was not happy about this ruling and said that he would appeal. One would think that that would be the end of the case, but unfortunately, as school started, there were protests outside of the school. Members of the community weren't happy with this ruling and they wanted these 55 English learners to attend the Afrikaans school. There were also some allegations of foul play where some of the principals in the nearby schools told that they were forced to write in an affidavit that their schools were full and that the Afrikaans school had to accept these 55 learners. Now, the idea behind this video is not to delve into the intricacies of this entire matter, but it's more to talk about the resulting conflict between community members. People are accusing the school of excluding learners based on language, but that this is just a front to discriminate against them based on the color of their skin. But the school's defense is that they're not discriminating against anybody, but that the school is actually full. Unfortunately, this conflict led to protests outside of the school, and this is a matter of great concern. Now, in the past few years, we've witnessed many protests outside of schools, some going so far as to burn the school down. In this specific incident, the protesters were burning tires and even throwing petrol bombs outside of the school. And this is the part that I do not understand. Why do we need to go over into violence when there are more civil ways to deal with matters like this? Why not just leave this matter to be attended to in court? We do have judiciary processes in place to solve these issues. And if you're not happy, you can appeal as Mr. Panyaza Lesufi did. Or even before we go into the courts, why not sit around the table and have a discussion and negotiate? Now, I'm sure many of these processes were followed, but the sad thing is it's not exciting enough to make the front page. But what is exciting enough to make the front page seems to be violence. So let's look at one of the groups that were part of the initial protest. We have the economic freedom fighters who seems to be everywhere where they can find some media attention. This seems to be a political party desperate for attention, clutching at straws just to find some political relevance. But along with them, others hitched onto the bandwagon and started protesting. But this led to some of the parents going to the school protesting the protesters. And I'm sure they also just wanted to make sure that their children are safe. I couldn't help but think of all those teachers and all of those learners trying to do basic education in a scenario, in an environment that is not conducive to it. How any academic work can be done in an environment like that, I absolutely do not know. Just a big shout out and thank you to all of the super teachers at that specific school that helped to get the process along and could do basic education and just go on with the work in their classroom. Teaching in general is difficult enough without having protests outside of the school, without having tires burning and petrol bombs being flung over the road. If any of the protesters are watching this video or you would like to protest in future, let's not protest at schools. It is much more important for our youth to be educated in order for the economy and the future of this country. If you are protesting outside of a school and you are using violence, you are teaching the learners in those schools that this is how adults should behave. And when they are adults, they are just going to perpetuate this irrationality. If you're not happy with the court ruling, go protest outside of the courtroom. If you're not happy with the way in which the Department of Education is running education, go protest outside of their buildings. Please leave the schools alone. For some, there seems to be a misconception that Afrikaans is racist. The equation that they make in their head is that Afrikaans equals white and white equals racist. Now, I agree that we should not be insensitive to the atrocities of the past and that the apartheid government spoke Afrikaans and that Afrikaans was used as a medium of education to suppress others. I get that. I get that in the past it was the language of the oppressor. But to still be perpetuating that archaic way of thinking in 2018 is not going to get you anywhere. If you are one of the people that are saying that Afrikaans equals white, you need to understand that more non-white people use Afrikaans as a home language than white people. Afrikaans is a great language. It's my language. It's spoken by a diversity of people. But to say that white people who are Afrikaans are also racist is backwards thinking. If somebody is a racist and they are white and they are Afrikaans speaking, you need to understand that they are using their language to perpetuate their own philosophy. If I can make an analogy, if a murderer uses an axe to kill another person, you cannot blame the axe. It is the person using the tool that commits the atrocity. An axe can also be used for many other productive actions. It's all in how you choose to use the tool. Now, in this case, Afrikaans is merely a tool. The language is a tool. And the one clear distinction that many people fail to make is the distinction between Afrikaans and Afrikaner. Afrikaans is the language. Afrikaner is one specific group who has their own identity. And unfortunately, in the past, these Afrikaners were in charge of the apartheid regime. So maybe you should relook your own prejudice and not buy into this prejudice of all Afrikaans people are racist. The next matter is this notion of Afrikaans schools that benefit from their historical privilege in having better quality teachers and better quality education. Now, in some cases, this happens to be true. But there are also excellent English schools. There are also excellent schools in townships and in rural areas. So when we look at the numbers, you'll see that in our country, we've got about 24,000 schools. Of these schools, it's about 2,500 that use Afrikaans as a language of instruction. But this also includes dual medium schools where Afrikaans as well as English is used as the instruction language. But there are only 1,300 exclusively Afrikaans medium schools in the country. That makes up for about 5% of all of the schools. So getting your child into an Afrikaans school does not automatically guarantee excellent education. There are many English medium schools that perform great, that has got a great level of education. Unfortunately, as with many of the issues in South Africa, there seems to be a political agenda behind this move. It seems that for many of our politicians, there's a greater focus on transformation than there is on quality of education. Now, I'm definitely not saying that we should have segregated schools, that there should be Afrikaans medium schools and there should be English medium schools. But what I am saying is that we are focusing on the lesser of two evils. It is much more detrimental to neglect the quality of education than to not have diverse schools. So what then is the real problem in this scenario? And in my opinion, it comes down to space. We simply do not have enough schools to service the population of South Africa. What it comes down to is that we've got an exponential problem that we are trying to fight in a linear way. Globally, the population is increasing exponentially, and this is also true in South Africa. In other words, we would need to increase the infrastructure. We need to build more schools quicker than people are having children. Along with this, we need to train more and more super teachers each year to service these schools. But unfortunately, teaching is not a very attractive profession. So I'm not going to go on another rant about how we should increase the prestige of the teaching profession, because I've done so in previous videos and I'm sure I'll make a few of these videos in the future, but I'm not going to do it now. But we as a society need to start looking for solutions collaboratively. It is not only the politician's job to find the solution. It is the teacher, it is the parent, it is the school governing body, it is everybody that needs to get education right. It does feel in this video that I've been going at some of the politicians, but I'd also like to turn my attention to those 5% Afrikaans schools. If you are one of those schools who are hiding behind a language policy to ensure that only Afrikaans-speaking white people attend your school, stop being a coward. We need to increase access to education for all. And instead of fighting diversity, it is time to open your arms and let people of diverse cultures, of diverse races into your school. The problem is, many schools think this will come from the learners. When parents from various cultures and various races start enrolling in your school, the diversity in your school will increase. The much better option is to take leadership and start appointing staff from diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, diverse races, and diverse ages. Do yourself a favor. Go to the website of any of these Afrikaans medium schools and go look at their staff demographic. It's interesting to see that schools where these types of allegations are made consist mainly of white Afrikaans-speaking teachers. If you're an Afrikaans medium school and you welcome diversity, why isn't it reflecting in the demographic of your staff members? It is time for all schools to open their doors to ensure that we can educate learners, that we can make a positive difference so that this country can flourish. If you are a super teacher, you will start fighting for diversity and for greater access. Another issue that leads to the overcrowding of schools and the fact that we do not have enough schools in certain provinces is immigration from other provinces. We are seeing in the current economic climate this immigration of people into Gauteng and the Western Cape. And with the Western Cape and its water issues, I am foreseeing many more people moving up to the Highveld, putting more pressure on our infrastructure. This is going to have a cascading effect on society and on our communities. We need true leadership. Okay, I think I've said quite enough now. What I want to do is quickly head on over to Twitter and just look at 3 tweets that emphasize the things that I've said in this video. Max de Prier writes on Twitter, "Dear Overvaal parents/teachers, when I was a teenager, I attended a dual medium high school in Kroonstad. It was a good experience. Why don't you ask for extra teachers/resources and volunteer to become a dual medium school and so avoid any exclusion and resultant resentment?" This tweet really resonated with me. I was in an exclusive Afrikaans primary school, but when I went to high school, the school turned dual medium. I went to high school with people from various religions and backgrounds, and what I've learned from them is invaluable. Just imagine the social cohesion that we could have if everybody goes to diverse schools and get to learn from each other. On Twitter, Barry Bateman wrote, "Hoërskool Overvaal, after judgment was handed down, a group of people, presumably parents, started shouting that they are going to burn the school down on Wednesday. They accused the school of being racist." And I've alluded to this before in this video. Do not burn down the infrastructure that we already have too few of. Let's not burn down the house you live in. And then a tweet from the Gauteng Department of Education. MEC Lesofie and MPL Joe Mpisi appeal to members of the community protesting over Hoërskool Overvaal to give the department space to deal with the matter and to remain calm. Great tweet, but how much space do we still need to do the basics right? We do understand that it is a mammoth task to manage education, but we need more decisive leadership and, more importantly, preemptive leadership. And that brings me to the end of this episode. But I'd like to hear what you have to say about this matter. So make sure to join the conversation in the comment section down below. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you'd like to see all super teachers unite under one banner so that we can make a positive difference in each and every classroom. If you'd like to watch more videos on this channel, be sure to tap or click on the link right there or the one right below that one. If you'd like to subscribe, there's a logo that's popping up right here. Be sure to click or tap on that and you'll be subscribed to this YouTube channel. Until next time, my name is Francois Nordia and I am a super teacher.